Yeah, next we're really honored to have our keynote speaker, Dr. Xiang Bing. He's a founding dean of Changjiang Graduate School of Business. And Changjiang Graduate School of Business established in 2002 through the financial support of the Li Jiacheng Foundation. Today is considered one of the major graduate business schools in China, with a leading role in the growing Chinese private sector. Dr. Xiang Bing is the heart and soul of CKGSB. As a professor of China's commerce and globalization, he carries unique view of global business development and strategic position. Let's welcome Dr. Xiang Bing.
Thanks so much for this kind remarks, and really the honor, delight to be here today. And especially, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Minister Chow and Madam Cheung for joining this event, and also thank all of you taking the time from your busy schedule to be here today. Actually, I'm a Canadian product. You know, I'm not only faculty at the CKGSB, who got a degree from Canada. I'm a PhD from University of Alberta. Everybody else, like Professor Henry Cao, like, you know, a Yale PhD, taught at UC Berkeley, North Carolina before he joined the CKGSB. Vast majority of faculty got a degree from the top US schools and taught some of the leading US universities. I have two daughters. They were born at University of Alberta Hospital, University of Calgary Hospital. So I'm really a Canadian family in that regard, you know. I'm very proud to be Canadian as well, you know. And today, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you my view on the ongoing China-US trade frictions. And most recently, I've done this kind of talks in many places, you know, in China and Stockholm, Amsterdam, London. I'm going to New York City today to do a talk tomorrow in New York City, then Center for Strategic International Studies in DC the day after tomorrow. And then different topics, but this issue is always there. And what is my view on China-US trade frictions and its potential global implications? And then this is my personal view. I even don't represent a school here, okay? My colleagues may have different views as well. And then, well, firstly, let's take a look at the economic significance of this friction. And then let's look at a broader picture, a more holistic way, look at ongoing trade friction between China and the US, and some of the potential global implications, you know. Well, economic significance, well, it cannot be overstated. For example, in 2016, US shared global GDP about 24%, and China about 15%. So together about 40%. You look at the contribution of China and the US to global economic increment, over 40%. So when these two economies in sort of conflict or friction, definitely it will impact global economy in a fundamental way, profound way, you know. And this is a trade dependence between the US, China, I have the data. And then you see the reason why President Trump's not very happy about the trade relations, because US is the economy enjoying largest trade deficit, going wrong direction and fast, you know. China is the country enjoying this surplus, you know. So there's some reason for President Trump to be unhappy with what's going on, you know. And this is sort of a schedule of key events in this round of a trade friction between China and US, and it reported in major news, and you know all of that. So I'll not go over this in detail, and then rather I'll rather to talk about some of the potential undercurrent underlining this China-US trade frictions. Well, firstly, look at relation between China and US. What are the philosophies, the basic philosophy of the US's China policy? At least let's go back to President Clinton's time. The philosophy, the strategy for the US toward China is what they call embrace China, Now, embrace China means, try to make China, integrate China global trading system, make China a responsible global stakeholder. And then because of that, U.S. let China into the WTO. And then hopefully China will become one of them. And then the rule of law, the democracies, the development of the private sectors, and let the market play a fundamental role allocating resources, all of that. And Obama time is about a 90-degree change. And then I was privileged, our school has been privileged to work with the leading university think tanks in the US for the past few years, all the way from Kennedy School, Asia Society, the Brookings, and then the Council for Foreign Policy, all of that. And so we had a really frank and direct, honest discussion or debates, and sometimes views are different, So in Obama time, the China policy has been changed from embracing China to one embracing China with a hedging strategy. And because they did a sort of a comprehensive review of China's strategy since 2001, China joined the WTO. And the US side thought, well, China got much to gain. Actually, China's economic progress and then also the military might have been improved significantly. And the US, on the other hand, has not achieved its intended objectives, in terms of market access to China's economy, in terms of American companies being treated fairly in China, in terms of protecting IPP, all of that. So the strategy toward China has been changed into the one, embrace China with a hedging strategy. What does it mean? Well, it has two components. Number one, I think the US has been trying to have a new WTO without China, namely TPP, TTIP. And security-wise, pivot to Asia. So two legs of this President Obama strategy. So the China strategy meant a 19-degree twist, from embrace China to embrace China with a hedging strategy. President Trump got another 90-degree twist. So now, right now, China is viewed as a strategic competitor, revisionist. That's another 90-degree change. That's the underlying factors before we see the surface in the China-US trade frictions, Well, and this is stated in these governmental documents or papers, 2017, 2018 National Security Strategy, It lay out clearly, And then China-US being singled out as the key competitor, a revisionist from a US point of view. And US concerns about China, this are the main concerns, not all of them, not inclusive of all the concerns. Number one, they think China is authoritarian vis-a-vis the democracy, which you see in the US. And then they name China rule by law, not rule of law, and this is US view. And then secondly, they think China has too much element of state capitalism. In a sense, government play a very powerful role in allocating resources and the significant presence of state-owned enterprises and government and enterprises getting too close. And because of that, it may pose a challenge for fair competition globally. And also they think China has some protectionist policies, especially some of the policies that may discriminate against foreign companies and private companies. The state-owned enterprises may have some favor. Actually, this is a month ago, and then I was privileged to have a dialogue with Laura Tyson, the dean of UC Berkeley Business School, the UC Berkeley. Laura Tyson was the chairwoman of the Economic Council of Clinton administration. One thing I learned from our dialogue debate is, in the U.S., when they talk about economic policies, the focus was on how to create a level playing field for all enterprises, whether you're Americans or Chinese or Canadians. That's the key focus. But in our discussion, this is usually not a key focus of the topic. Also, this sector, that company, this sector, you get a subsidy, you get support the government, okay? Maybe that's something we can learn from the US, how to create a level playing field for all enterprises around the globe, how to make China one of the most competitive platform for doing business, fair, transparent. That's something we should work on, okay? I think that's something I learned from the dialogue from Laura Tyson. This is about a month ago, you know. Anyway, so U.S. considered China as a challenge to global rule-based, the global order. And then definitely the perceived China threat. And China has become number 2 in GDP, and with the size of population and economic power. And then China may be in the position to challenge the U.S. one day. So this is perceived the China threat also has playing a role. And then there's a broad group of people in the U.S., they may view China, well, letting China into the WTO was the bad idea now, okay? So they changed their mind after many years experiment, you know. So there's a lot of soul searching in that regard as well. So I think this reason why the China-U.S. trade friction is far more complex than President Trump himself, okay? And you look at the mass, the media, these top China experts from the leading universities, think tanks, and you look at U.S. companies which have invested much in China. Definitely, these U.S. companies which have invested in China are the fundamental pro-China forces in the U.S. To me, that's the most important pro-China forces in the U.S. No other forces coming close. But because recently, you know, many of the U.S. companies in China have not been doing well. And for many reasons, you know, many of the Chinese companies getting better. So the market in China gets more competitive, you know. And then so I think many of them have changed the stand from sort of a pro-China to not so pro-China now. And of course, there's a card by President Trump, you know, so this issue gets really complicated. Okay, so I think the China-U.S. friction will be here for some time because of that. And it's not just a trade issue anymore, you know. Well, what are the implications of this for China, for U.S., for Canada, and for many other nations? You know, when the number 1, number 2 economy getting into a fight like this, it could be ugly, it could be long-term. And this have a profound impact for trade, investment, and bilateral relations as well. Well, not all the things are negative. Well, firstly, I think partly because of this, China will have a new round of opening up and deregulations. And you see many of that, recent documents by Ministry of Commerce on June 18, 2018, this year. And then there's a negative list, you know. And then, I was giving talk to the Europeans, you know, they complain, say, well, you know, for the past 5, 6 years, you know, we have been asking a lot of things from Chinese government. They said, no. Now, until recently, oh my God, we got all the things we wanted overnight. You know, there's something really positive. You know, we've been trying so hard for many years, unable to get a single one of them. Today, you see a flood of them in one day. So there's a positive sense, you know. And if you look at the history of China, and then usually, you know, the pressure from the external forces sometimes really accelerate for reform. At least that was the case in several cases. You know. So it's not all negative, okay? And then it's good for China as well. I think the new round of reforms is good for China as well, you know. And you're going to see a flood of bilateral relations, trade deals will be negotiated you know, not only now, but also in the future. And many examples of this. The trade deal between Japan and EU, for example. Recent trade deal between US and the EU was to be sanctioned by parliaments. And then the deal the US had with Mexico. Canada has yet to negotiate one with the US. So I see a flood of bilateral trade deals will emerge because the central idea of the system in the past was U.S. in the leadership position. When U.S. said, I'm sorry, I want to take a nap, or I want to take my interest first, American first, then the old system failed. We're looking for new systems. The new system, you'll see many of the bilateral deals. And you will see China relation with Japan improved partly because of this. I see China-Canada relation become really improved in the future as well, with Mexico, with many other nations, So that will be the whole new game for years to come, For the Chinese companies, you really have to think about how do you position yourself for this changed landscape of global commerce. I think for some of the top companies in China, you'll be forced to go global. You have to think about how do you deploy your resources in ASEAN countries, in Canada, in Mexico, in Europe, because China has been the largest trading partner for vast majority of nations. China is not like ex-Soviet Union. Even the China-US relation go to the extreme case, the hard landing Cold War. There are a lot of things China can do. Okay? And we do have a group of very good companies. I think they're ready to go global. I think the China trade friction is a trigger, force them to go over the comfort zone, to have many truly global companies. So it's not all negative, okay? And one thing I'm very positive is the economic future, what I call the Confucian economic sphere, a block, What I mean by that, our school has been paying much attention to this since 2006. We had our first Korean CEO program, 2007. Actually, 3 years ago, we have our first Korean EMBA program. We had 40-some students. We had then the Deputy Prime Minister of South Korea, Minister of Education, Minister of Manpower to be our Korea EMBA program. Okay, so we're doing well. And Japan, we had 2008, we had a China-Japan CEO Forum. We had one for each year for past many years, except earthquake year. We stopped for 1 year. And what I mean by Confucian economic bloc, I look at the societies which predominantly Confucianism in culture. This bloc will include the Greater China, mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, and Korea, Japan, Singapore, Vietnam. So this bloc, we have a great diversity of political systems. We have cultural commonality. Economically, we have doing awfully well. If you look at the data by the World Bank, and there are very few economies which manage to get over what we call mid-income trap, maybe half of them coming from this bloc. So great diversity in political system, but economically, we have been performing well. 2016, the combined nominal GDP of this Confucian economic bloc was about $19 trillion US. That was the biggest, bigger than US, bigger than EU. And you look at the economic increment, partly because of China, by far the largest. So you look at the size of GDP, equal to the global economic increment. This is making a lot of sense for China to focus on this bloc. This could be a key bloc to defend against anti-globalization, because every nation here, regions here, are pro-trade. And then much easier to do business with. And then from what I heard from the minister, China, Japan, Korea, a large free trading economy after the US for BC. Okay, this economy, very bright future. I think China should invest heavily in this regard. It's going to be a key cornerstone in the case of China-U.S. relation gets a hard landing. Okay? So, and also I think China has much to do. We have much work in the Social Security program. And China's Social Security program do not compare well with that of Scandinavian countries. Don't compare well with those of Canada. We don't even benchmark well against those of Russia. You look at the GDP per capita of financial resources. There's no reason why we cannot do better than Russia. Why we cannot have universal health care. Why we cannot have basic universal pension system. Why we cannot have unemployment insurance. Why the kids cannot go to college fully covered by the government. We fall far behind. If we have this as a priority in China, we can afford new rounds of deregulations. We have so many sectors still in the hands of state-owned enterprises. So new rounds of deregulation in China will give new opportunities for economic growth that can easily make China ready in the worst scenario of hard landing of China-U.S. relations. The Chinese government, economy, we have so many drivers at our disposal. So we should be confident to prepare for every scenarios. And I hope this China-U.S. trade conflict, because there's going to be reconfiguration, whole supply chain, value chain, and technology innovation. I see Vancouver may have a crucial role in such a play. I think Vancouver could be another Silicon Valley, sort of, because it's a great lifestyle, great weather. And then if you bring the talents from China and Canada together, and being so close by to the Silicon Valley, I think that dream may not be a pipe dream, maybe a choice, maybe a reality. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.